Welcome to the Nourished Brain Solutions podcast, where we leverage the power of whole foods-based integrative nutrition to optimize health, mood, energy, and the gut-brain connection. I'm Sarah Fajera, an integrative and functionally minded registered dietitian and owner of Nourished Brain Solutions in upstate New York. Let's get you nourished. Ruth Leyse-Wallace, PhD, has held the Registered Dietitian credential for 44 years. Her career began at Osawatomie State Hospital in Kansas, continued at the Menninger Foundation in Topkea, Kansas, Sharp Mesa Vista Hospital in San Diego, and HPA Willow Park Hospital in Plano, Texas. She returned to graduate school and earned a PhD degree in 1998 at the University of Arizona in Tucson, under the guidance of Mary Ann Kight, PhD, RD. Dr. Leyse-Wallace has served as adjunct faculty at Pima County Community College in Tucson, Arizona, and Mesa Community College in San Diego, California. She has published 3 books: The Meta-Paradigm of Clinical Dietetics, Derivation and Application, Linking Nutrition to Mental Health, and Nutrition and Mental Health. She served 5 years as the mental health resource professional for the Behavioral Health Nutrition Dietetic Practice Group of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Man, oh man, you have been doing this a long time. What a bio.
Well, you know,
Going on.
Interesting. You can't let go once you get it.
Going on 50 years. My gosh. So one of the big things that's really a common thread, throughout this bio of yours is behavioral health nutrition over and over again. So kick us off, tell us a little bit about really what that term means now and maybe how it's evolved over your impressive career.
Well, behavioral health has come to be defined as the study of emotions and behaviors and biology and the whole person as related to their mental well-being and their ability to function in everyday life and their concept of self and how they behave in their life. And so if any of those factors are influenced by nutrition, then we have behavioral health nutrition. I've always been interested in how people think and how they behave and how their emotions are influenced and how they influence their whole self and their functioning. And studying nutrition all the time, I couldn't help but see how almost every nutrient affects somebody's mental status, their nutritional status, their biology, how they function. And now we even know that it goes down to the level of the genes and the DNA that nutrients can affect that. So it's just, it encompasses the whole person.
Yeah. So even down to the level of genetic expression.
Yes.
It's incredible.
And we're learning more all the time.
Yeah. So Ruth, I know that, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has a behavioral health nutrition practice group, right? Which is really just a kind of a community of dietitians who are really involved and interested in this type of work. So what kind of areas might an RD or an RDN work in, if they're working in that area of behavioral health?
Oh, behavioral health in the Academy covers mental health, which is performance and mental function and activities and relationships. But it also includes eating disorders and substance abuse disorders and developmental and disorders. So intellectual and developmental disorders, IDD we call them. So all those areas fall under behavioral health, and people in the practice group usually practice in one or the other or maybe 2 of the areas and specialize in that.
So if a nutrition professional, if an RD and RDN was working with someone who was struggling in some way with behavioral health, right? What you described as emotion or behavior, really just mental well-being, ability to function, what might be some clues some critical, don't miss clues that nutrition could help someone to reach their goals of functioning at a higher level.
So you take a really close look at what they're eating and what they're not eating, and then their metabolism as shows up in their lab work or in their physical, their skin, their eyes, their nails, their hair, and see if anything, any anomaly that doesn't seem like the average normal human being would have. Then you look and see, is there a nutrient that links to that? And so those would be the signs and symptoms.
Yep. I know something that you and I have talked about in the past is even something like cracks at the corner of the mouth, right? Or a bright red tongue, meaning something like certain B vitamin deficiencies. Do you think a lot of people are aware that something like a nutrition-focused physical exam can give you so much information?
I know when I was teaching a class at Mesa College, I gave that as one of my lectures, and one person walked out and says, "This is exactly what I took this course to learn. You know, exactly what happens if you're not well nourished." But you can see, so you know how you feel energetically, even if it's not showing up on your skin.
Yes.
Sometimes it's how you feel emotionally can be related to like whether your blood sugar is low and whether you ate enough carbohydrate. So
I don't know where you settle on this, but I feel like we're in an era where the whole idea of personalized medicine and really individualized interventions is becoming quite the topic, right? Quite the hot topic where genetics, nutrigenomics is starting to come into clinical assessment. Right? To a part, lots to learn still.
We're going to be going that way, even more that way and more quickly that way, because everybody's genes and everybody's DNA is a little bit different. We really are all unique. Even we're unique from our twin sister, our mother, our father, or whatever. So the more we can get a handle on what these little quirks of our genes and our DNA do, then the more we'll be able to personalize. But we can personalize before that too. I mean, you know how things affect you versus somebody else, just in a broad sort of way. But you can get it down to like the biology. And if you can't absorb vitamin B12 and everybody else can, then you're still going to need some extra vitamin B12. So,
from your perspective, are there still elements of nutrition that really are foundational for everyone, you know, certain things, certain nutrients, right? Or considerations that really absolutely need to be in place for someone to thrive from a behavioral health nutrition point of view. What's your perspective on that?
We know that the brain needs glucose. We know that the cells are made up of essential fatty acids. We know that it takes a certain range of vitamins and minerals to metabolize your food and make small molecules out of big molecules of food, and you get the glucose and you metabolize things, and you need those essential, vital vitamins, which is why they're called vitamins. So you need all those, which are sort of a generic requirement of a human person. And we know some about that, but we don't know all about it even yet, because the scientific methods that we have are growing all the time, but they're not whole and they're not 100%. So we still have questions, and we still wonder, what does this do and what does that not do? So there's a lot of work to still be done in the field of nutrition, because we don't know exactly some of the functions of some of the minerals. Sometimes we don't know the cutoff point. You need this much, but this much is too much. And we don't know some of the tests that would really be an indicator. So scientists around the world are constantly working and getting new knowledge presented to the scientific community to see if we can encourage that. We still don't know exactly how to like totally quantify what somebody eats, because we don't know the content of all foods, and it even varies from season to season and place that it's grown and whatever. So there's a lot you can't say definitely, but you have some pretty good generalities that you can work with and apply. So it's an ever-growing field, actually, both behavioral health and nutritional science.
So, wow. So challenges even with intake assessment, sometimes, not to even mention that whole other piece of digestion, assimilation, and use, right? Like you had mentioned the B12, how that amount of absorption of a food rich in B12 could vary from person to person to person with real psychological consequences, right? For someone who is not digesting, absorbing, assimilating well, really taking it in.
B12 definitely affects your brain function if you get low.
Yeah.
It's, if it goes on too long, it's irreversible. So you don't want to just say, well, excuse me, okay, let it go, because you can't do that and expect to still stay healthy into your older years.
So talk to us a little bit about that one, Ruth, because, having done quite a bit of work in a hospital setting, I've seen a whole lot of B12 deficiency. And, some of the things that I've seen, largely from individuals who are older, many times who are on proton pump inhibitors, right, which lower gastric acid, impair B12 absorption, are symptoms like memory loss and confusion, cognitive dysfunction, loss of balance. So what's going on with that? You mentioned that it's pretty darn serious, B12 deficiency, and that it gets to a point where it's not reversible. How is that possible? What's really going on? Just as an example of kind of pulling this all together, of what's happening when someone is deficient in B12.
Well, the actual nerves that go from the brain to the rest of the body usually have a protective layer around the outside. If that protective layer gets compromised, then your brain can't communicate with the rest of your body very well, because it can't send neurotransmitters and signals. And B12 affects that layer around the nerves. And so many people, I think one study was 60% of people that are older, 65, say, and older, don't get enough B12 in their diet, or they can't metabolize it. And so that's a pretty big group in our population, and getting bigger all the time. So people just need to be aware and get their lab tests done and see if they need a better source, if they need to absorb it more, or what needs to be done for them particularly to not develop this deficiency.
Yeah, so knowing that risk factors are aging, right? Certainly. Right. Proton pump inhibitors. What else might be risk factors for something like B12 deficiency?
Well, a very small percent of the people have inherited an inability to absorb B12. But then people stop eating the sources of it if their dental care dental status gets compromised and they can't chew. Maybe they don't eat the meat that's the best source, or maybe they're not aware, or maybe they don't have enough money, or it's not available to them in the form of foods that they like and would eat. So it can be many social factors that might influence whether or not they're having a good enough source income into their body. So
Sure. Then you have malabsorption, right? All of that. That's tea and toast. Tea and toast diet. I've seen that a lot.
There's a number of medications. And they elderly take more medications as they go older. And so a lot of those medications could affect how well you can absorb B12. So
like you said, really being aware of what the symptoms are, right? Of some of these really common nutrient deficiencies and thinking about where you might be on the spectrum, right? Of something like memory concerns or cognitive health, right? Or even something like depression has been very closely linked to B12. Is that correct?
I think one of the things that concerns me a lot is that I heard these statistics at the ISNPR meeting about how many pregnancies are unplanned. And then so therefore the people that become pregnant do not know what their folic acid status is and can't have an opportunity to prepare. And then so many young women that are pregnant don't have enough folic acid, and that affects their children, if not in a birth defect, in their brain development. So we have all these people that are not aware and that don't do what they need to do, and it results in an impairment of the next generation. And it's just like sort of scary to me that can happen.
Yeah. So that's where you and I met, right? It was at the ISNPR conference in DC. Officially met. That's where we officially met.
First in the world to have a psychiatric nutrition conference. So that was wonderful.
It was really an incredible experience. So this abbreviation stands for the International Society for Nutritional Psychiatry Research,
right?
ISNPR. At the conference, just thinking back, it was last year, right? So there is quite a broad array of kind of interests and professional disciplines represented there. A lot of psychiatrists, right? Psychologists, a lot of mental health professionals, dietitians. You and I were there.
People.
Yeah. Professors and epidemiologists talking about really what's coming up in some of the trends in research and knowledge around this whole area of kind of brain function and mental health related to nutritional intake. And, really, the role that nutrition has.
It's not even just the new stuff, because sometimes we just need to be aware of some of the stuff that's already been said for years and years, and nobody's paying attention. Because right now, more and more attention is getting paid to something that was really commented on like years ago about overfishing the oceans and the sources of omega-3 fatty acids that are really low now compared to what they were, just because we're overfishing the oceans. And how can people get enough if there's not enough sources on Earth to feed everybody their requirement,
Yeah. So thinking about just long chain fatty acids, right? In the fish, you're referring to DHA and EPA. That was one of the really big focuses of a number of the presentations. So what role? I know you talked about prenatal nutrition a little bit there with folate. What role do DHA, EPA play in mental health as a whole, but even brain development? I think there's a lot to think about there.
Yes, the omega-3 fatty acids, which are the EPA and the DHA plus a few others, are so important in brain development from practically day one of pregnancy, and how that fetus develops their brain all along is reliant on DHA and EPA, mostly DHA at the beginning. And then it doesn't go away. It lessens as people get older, but you have to have enough to maintain the brain omega-3 fatty acids, and how the brain cells can function, and how their membranes can relate to like the other membranes of the other cells. So we don't outgrow it, but it's very crucial during pregnancy and like the first 2 years of life, especially.
It's interesting that something like fish consumption, consumption of these long chain fatty acids, omega-3 fatty acids, is so central to the dietary patterns that I think you and I as dietitians think of as promising for improving health in so many areas, right? Namely the Mediterranean dietary pattern, though there's lots to unpack with that, right? What exactly that means. Fish consumption is typically discussed as one of the pillars of something like a Mediterranean diet pattern. So, just recently, I think it was in 2017, this was published. Felice Jacka published the SMILES trial. We heard a lot about that at ISNPR. So supporting, see what it stands for, supporting the modification of lifestyle in lowered emotional states. That was incredible to hear her talking about that, the results from that study. Yeah, I mean, broadly, what I remember from a read through is that it was kind of a modified Mediterranean dietary pattern. And when they pulled people into a group with really consistent strategic guidance from a dietitian in Australia. The study was held, so a dietitian in Australia, and provided them with the substrate for this modified Mediterranean diet. They saw huge decreases in both depression and anxiety at the end of the study. And it was, I think it was 12 weeks, right? I'll link it to the bottom of the page once this is published. So anyone who's interested can go through it and read it. But, the notes I have from ISNPR were that the dietary intervention group, as compared to the control group, which was a social support group in this case, they saved about $350 of out-of-pocket costs because health overall had improved to such a point where they required less medical intervention, right? So their out-of-pocket costs decreased. So there was both
a real thing that people can really link onto and say, if I'm healthy, it costs less and I have more money for something else.
Hey, I really love that way of thinking because, when you think about trying to create change, right, you're so interested, as am I, in how people shift, right, from one state of being to another, really how they get there and how they overcome a lot of the barriers that might be present. Whether it's habits, right, behaviors, taste preferences, etc. Cost money is often one of those things that comes up as a perceived barrier to changing food related behaviors. So I thought that was so promising. Food is clearly powerful enough that long term, right, there can be some really
that you not only save money, but you feel so much better.
So much better.
Life in a different way. So that's a plus that people probably don't measure very often, but they
don't measure very often.
I think that this is one place where you could say, okay, is there a possibility of doing too much, eating too well, eating too much fish, say for example. And I just saw an interview on NPR with somebody that had Paul Greenberg that did an experiment on himself and ate fish every day for a year and to see every meal.
Wow.
And he ended up with very, very high mercury in his body. So he had to stop for a while. So depending a little bit on how much you eat and where it's from and the source of it, what conditions those fish are living in, which in the United States were pretty good, but we eat a lot of imported things. So a person has to be aware of both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So really, although a food may have been really, so attractive as part of a dietary pattern that was shown in research to achieve some outcome, that it really is about the pattern, right? That's what I'm kind of hearing you say, that it's never just one single food.
By Jacka's description of what they call Western diet, because it's the one that a lot of Americans eat.
Yeah, I think one of the really big shifts that's occurred over the past few decades from my vantage point, you've been in this much, much, much longer than I have, but has been an increase, an unprecedented increase in sugar consumption and consumption of refined carbohydrates, which, at ISPNR, they were talking about how many nutritional implications there were to that, both because nutrients can be displaced, but also because, certain need for certain nutrients like magnesium, right, might increase just trying to kind of push through all these carbohydrates and metabolize them. So, when I think about the Western dietary pattern and how someone might be feeling or might not be feeling, depending on their goals, I think a lot about nutrient displacement. That we only eat so much over the course of a day, and how a lot of these really nutrient dense foods, right, like foods that contain omega-3 fatty acids and zinc and B12, right, and slow burning carbohydrates, things like that, just often get left out of the diet because they might not be quite as convenient, right, or fast or quick or easy to access.
High calorie malnutrition is like one of the best descriptive terms I've ever come across.
High calorie malnutrition. Yeah.
But you don't.
So what does that mean to you when you hear that term?
That means you have a lot of energy to be processed, but you don't have, like you said, the magnesium or the thiamine or the vitamin C or the other B vitamins to process this food and get it into the cells where it's needed. So, you have a lot of demand, but not enough resources in your body to to metabolize healthfully and keep your physical self going at a high rate, at a high state.
Thiamine is one of those really interesting nutrients because, I've been doing a lot of reading about thiamine over the past, I would say 9 months or so. And I've been really surprised to see how many case studies of thiamine deficiency have been documented other than in cases of alcoholism, right? Because you and I know that with ETOH or excessive alcohol intake, thiamine is depleted relatively quickly. And a lot of the confusion, the gait disturbances, beriberi, right? The edema, all of that comes with severe thiamine deficiency is often seen in that population. But there's other populations as well. What have you seen?
Just poor diet in general, and then high carbohydrate on top of that. It is like preliminary steps to that. So it can be people that are going on low carb diets and or high carb diets, but not paying attention to the quality of the carbohydrate, because thiamine is one thing that's supplemented in a lot of carbohydrate products. But if you don't eat those, it doesn't matter to you, does it? Or a person that has an eating disorder might not eat quality.
Right.
And so it can affect, I guess the biggest, newest population that I've been aware of is people that have bariatric surgery, have bypass, gastric bypass. And thiamine deficiency is one of the most common deficiencies in that group. And who would have thought, that would happen?
Yeah.
So people just need to be constantly aware and checking on themselves. And if they get funny symptoms, they should really go to the doctor or go to a nutritionist, a dietitian, and get assessed.
Yeah, which, like you said, would really look like oftentimes first the physical exam, right? So looking for symptoms of thiamine deficiency, which, I think we should really throw a little list out there for people, right? What might they be looking for? So I know, weakness, fatigue, psychosis, right? The edema, there's dry beriberi, wet beriberi. What else comes to mind for you?
The one I think that when I was working at an alcoholic treatment unit, the one that people paid the most attention to is what they called confabulation, because people just sort of make up things and they're not true, and sometimes they don't realize that they're sort of stretching the truth quite a lot, or just saying things off the cuff that is related to their nutritional status. They can't think very well, and so they can't express themselves very well. So that's kind of sort of what we think of as a severe thiamine deficiency. Lack of ability to think clearly is a sign of a lot of nutrient deficiency. So
sure is.
Concentrate, and they can't think, and they can't really express themselves. That would be one sign to take a look at your nutritional status and see.
You don't really keep massive stores around, right? So it can be depleted. Within a couple weeks, if you're not getting any.
One other really interesting thing that I read just recently, I was looking at some things on total parenteral nutrition, TPN, which isn't a common thing among most people, but you can even get thiamine deficiency on TPN,
right?
Because you're sort of artificially pushing food and energy through the body's systems. And the thiamine isn't sufficient to manage that, so a person can get thiamine deficiency. So, you can look at it from all kinds of ways.
And it's really largely carbohydrates, right, in a parenteral nutrition formulation, so that makes sense. Ruth, when you think about just the the standard American diet, what most people are eating, right? Really what's available in our food supply. Do you feel like we have a good chance of getting in really the nutrients that are critical to brain structure and function, everything from omega-3 fatty acids to thiamine and magnesium and iron, selenium, right? All of those good things and more. Or do you think that there's things that people need to pay special attention to, where perhaps certain nutrients or compounds, phytochemicals, antioxidants might not be readily available in our food supply. So we really need to kind of seek them out. What's your feeling on that?
I think if people pay attention and have the intent, and they have enough, money to buy food, of course.
Right.
I don't think it's impossible to eat a nutritionally adequate diet in the United States.
So it really just takes perhaps a little bit more investigation, right? So not only of how an individual is feeling on a day-to-day basis, but also some knowledge, it sounds like, which could be, attained from a nutrition professional, certainly. But what are some other places where people can go for really good, reliable nutrition information, especially related to this whole area of mental health, cognitive functioning? What are some of your favorite resources?
There's a website that the government has called the SAMHSA. I think I can't remember the exact order of the words now.
Yeah, shoot it to me and I'll pop it. Yeah,
it's a mental health website. And they have a lot of information about different conditions. And then there's also the USDA and the NIH websites that can give you lots of information about food and contents and health conditions. One of the other websites that I think is very reliable is Oregon State University has a Linus Pauling division. And they have a lot about nutrition on the Linus Pauling website at Oregon State University. So it's very in depth and it's reviewed periodically. So I think it's a good one. So those are some of them.
Yeah.
If other come up in my mind, I'll interrupt and tell you.
Yeah, Oregon State has really fantastic micronutrient summaries. So in depth. So I think, I agree with you. That's a great place for people to take a really deep dive into something they might be interested in learning more about. Yeah.
There's a lot of medical journals if people like to go to PubMed. They can just put in a topic and see what the latest research is if you like to read abstracts of research and then go further into a topic that you like, which I love PubMed. So
yeah, for sure. One of the areas that is most exciting to me is the whole conversation around the microbiome. Yeah. So, when we were at ISNPR, how much did we hear about this, right? About the gut-brain connection and the vagus nerve running back and forth, how certain bacteria are sending certain signals and information and playing into
between our gut and our brain.
Yeah. And playing into, just neurotransmitter function and all of it. It's so incredibly interesting. So I wanted to ask you.
There's a book put out by some scientists in Ireland that were at the ISPNR.
Psychobiotic Revolution, right?
That might be it.
Yeah.
They're from Ireland. But
yes.
The thing that I was struck by in that book was they do list the actual name of the bacteria or the organism and what it does and make recommendations about what people need as far as types of more microorganisms, which I think is kind of hard to find. And then right now, the labeling of the foods really aren't caught up. I mean, I was looking in the grocery store and even at the different yogurts, sometimes they don't have the organism or they don't have what the quantity is per unit serving or whatever. So it's hard to even tell if you're trying to buy something, what you're buying. So we need to do some catch up. But I think one really important thing is we have more coming up. There's more laboratories that are doing the kind of testing that would help you assess somebody's microbiome. There's a man at University of California at San Diego named Rob Knight, Knight.
Mm-hmm.
It has some real shows on that it's been on TV here, but it's on the web also at UCSD about the microbiome, and that's one of his specialties. And he is just published so much that's so interesting. So that would be a person to follow if you wanted to find out more. And there's a few people that have just collected their feces every day and then assessed it for like a year at a time, and then trace that according to like what their health was, if they developed a new disease and whatever.
Yeah.
So people that are willing to do that, and now they're doing it for people that come back from space. They try to see what happened to their microbiome when they were sent up to space, and then they come back, and what were the changes? What, was it unhealthy or was it healthy?
So interesting. So when you're thinking about really supporting the microbiome, so you mentioned, that book by John Cryan, right? If I'm saying his name correctly,
Right.
Who's published literally hundreds of studies on the microbiome and gut brain and all that. When you think about all that's out there, the resources that you've come across, things you've read, what do you feel are really, as far as we know, the critical pieces to supporting a healthy microbiome? And maybe you could give us a little more sense of what that word means for those who aren't quite as familiar with it.
Well, apparently we all have our unique combination and quantities of different microorganisms in our gut. And it can change even by the hour, much less by the day, from time to time, based on what we eat. So if we eat fermented food, or if we eat vegetables and fruits, and how clean they are, how well are they clean? Are they favorable microbiome or microorganisms because your food is carrying them in, or it's just like what combination and what your body does with them. And even if you have dogs and cats in your house, or everything around you can affect your microbiome. But eating, I think the strongest food that you might think of that you could do is anything that's fermented, because fermentation involves the microorganisms. But there's a lot of dietary sources too. And so, do you eat yogurt? Do you eat fresh vegetables? Do you eat only like really highly processed foods that are high in sugar? Refined fat and sugar aren't going to have as many. So, and then what you do with it at home matters too, how you treat it.
Yeah. So it's, the way I think about, how our food choices impact, is that if someone is really not getting in any foods that are feeding the good bacteria, right, or a good diversity of bacteria that could play a lot of positive roles and have really good function in the human body, it's almost like they're starving, right, by eating maybe a standard American diet, starving those good bacteria, and those populations can't thrive. So their numbers stay lower, right? The diversity is less than it might be if someone just took in different sorts of nutrition. What else do you think is really exciting that's coming up in behavioral health nutrition and mental health and nutrition?
One of the things that I've been thinking about lately is, are there any more interventions that we could use to help people? And people that have weight problems, people that are obese, that have been fighting it and very frustrated by it, and they're maybe ashamed, maybe they don't know what to do, maybe they don't even want to really talk about it because they don't want to be embarrassed. And what kind of interventions can you do to be supportive of people? Because maybe they just don't want education, they don't want facts and figures, they want ability to change. And the way you change your body is you change your mind in many cases. And new, well, I don't know that it's new, but in PTSD and some of the other trauma-related issues, they've been using a writing intervention where people write how they're feeling or what they're thinking and this, that, and the other. And it's very cathartic for people to get past some of the places where they're stuck in their mind. And so to apply this to people that are fighting obesity and all the emotions go with it, and all the totally embedded eating habits and eating attitudes that they have. Maybe doing little short writing things could help, because that's an intervention we haven't tried in dietetics that I'm aware of. But I know now that the San Diego Dietetic Association eating disorder dietitians have a resource that they use among themselves, and one of them is a writing exercise. And it sort of goes along with all these other places that are trying this kind of way to get people access to their inner emotions and things. And we're dealing with the nutrition food. People have been abused of food and abused of eating in many ways from their childhood sometimes. And so maybe kind of intervention that we could work on doing carefully and selectively and wisely and supportively to help people get over a hump that they've been fighting with for a long time. So that would be one thing. And the other thing I think would be especially amenable to dietitians doing research on is one of the parts of doing an assessment for malnutrition is a test that they call the hand grip strength of how strong your hands are. And that's one of the 6 attributes of malnutrition. And now the people that from ISNPR have come out with a study that showed that the hand grip strength can also be an indicator of cognitive ability. 5 different attributes of cognitive ability. And I thought, we're already assessing for malnutrition in some of our patients, and we could do the hand grip strength, and we could see, any side effects this might have, side effects in the quotes, from other testing, and see how, verify this in our populations. And I just think that would be such exciting research for clinical dietitians to do. I just think we need more contributions and research, and those are 2 ideas that have come to me just lately, and I think, that would be so exciting.
Yeah. So to really have more objective measures of how nutritional changes are shaping function. Yeah.
And another thing that I think would be, and I maybe somebody's done this, but I haven't heard of it, and that is, I wish we had a sort of a global feeling for what kind of lab tests, results, assessment types of information are dietitians getting from people that refer to them. Are the psychiatrists, are the physicians, are the nurse practitioners, are the social workers, are they giving dietitians a lot of biochemical laboratory type information or not? I don't know if we know that. Maybe surely we're getting more than just, carbohydrate, glucose, and whether your cholesterol is high. We need to have more on the exact nutrients that people could be low in. So that would be a really interesting thing for clinical behavioral health nutritionists to look into and get a lot of people's input, from around the country. Just see what the status of it is. I don't think we know.
Yeah. So thinking along the lines of really what kind of information do we really need to do the best, most comprehensive assessment possible?
Yeah, right. With so many people being low in B12, are we getting that information get-go, or do we have to request it? Just like, what do you have to work with when a patient comes into your office?
Yeah, really, I think timely, questions and thoughts. I love what you said about the writing piece, because we're really living, I feel, in the age of information. Gosh, what data can't you find, right, on Google, right? Or PubMed, right? A search. Yes, it takes time and dedication. And, of course, having years of exposure, right, shapes your knowledge base. So it's not as simple as doing a simple Google search, but still, I feel that transformation in health behaviors does usually come from a lot of internal work, right? That's a lot of the science and art of behavior change. It
That's how
taught
we
a,
change.
yeah,
You change from the inside out.
right. Change from the inside out. And, external is just a guide, right? Just a guide. I taught a weight management class years ago. And one of the resources we used was a workbook called the Appetite Awareness Workbook. It's written by, I think she's a psychologist. Have you seen this book? It's Linda Craighead, PhD. It's really just a part workbook, part opportunity for reflection, a lot of exercises related to kind of where you're landing on the hunger scale and body awareness and how you're processing your experiences about eating. Right? Whether
Sounds
it's
like a really good book.
whether it's really kind of guilt oriented, right? What are your triggers for eating? Trying to really tune into what your experience really is and becoming clear on what's coming from you, what's coming from outside. And we got so much good feedback on that workbook. I remember one woman who had, just worked through Weight Watchers for years and years, which was a never ending struggle, right? She always ended up right back where she had been when she started. She said, this is the piece that Weight Watchers is always missing, right? Or those calorie control plans is always missing. She said, I remember her talking about how she had never really even thought about her response to eating, and her reasons for picking up her fork, right? It was just always about something or someone externally telling her, when she'd had enough, right? Based off of points or calories or things like that. And that whole process was, transformative for her. I know that because she told me a couple years later, I saw her again and she said, I still have that book. I still have that book and I still look at it and read it and look at it. So, it's powerful stuff, if you can have both the knowledge, right? From the right support, whatever that looks like. And then also the space to do the internal work. I think that's the best of both worlds to creating behaviors that stick.
It's one of the roles that dietitians in training should be really aware of and develop is like, not only are you educating with facts and figures, but you're also listening, you're supportive, you're guiding people's thinking about their food, their nutrition, their weight, their body in so many ways. So nutrition counseling, as far as nutrition education, is really two different aspects that both need to be incorporated. And you need to listen for cues from the person coming back, like motivational interviewing, and let people set goals and also help people get into their own head and see. And that's really one of the things that makes behavioral health so fascinating.
Yes. Yeah, it sure is, man. And what a field, to be in and involved in for so long. In your case, so many years. It just, I can't imagine, just what you've seen, right? In all of this time and how exciting it must be to see so many developments, right? And just see the role of a nutrition professional, dietitian becoming more and more and more critical, as these changes happen.
When I started with my first jobs, we didn't know anything compared to what we know now.
Yeah. And in 30 years, I bet others will be saying the same, right? Looking back, well, they didn't know much.
I wish I was 30 again so I could get in on this new person.
Yep. Just harness all the great information. Well, yeah, beautiful. Ruth, it's been a pleasure to just connect with you on what's available for people to tap into. Where can people find you if they want to just learn a little bit more about perhaps your books, right? Learn a little bit more in that way, or
on Amazon. But right now, my website has been hacked from somebody in China.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Off the internet. And in another few months, I'll probably have it back up again, but I have to start over and make my website. So it will be under my name, Ruth Leyse-Wallace, as usual. And
perfect.
So that will be one thing. I don't really go on Facebook too much, and I don't really go on social media too much, but you can always email me or look at my books and get my email address off of those. So either way is okay.
Fantastic. So, yep, we'll put your website up when it's ready to go, whenever that might be. And we'll, put up some links to your books too, so people can see those. So very good. Very good. Any parting words or advice, Ruth, for individuals or for aspiring behavioral health, nutrition dietitians to be?
Well, I just want to encourage people that are in dietetics to consider behavioral health as one of their specialty areas, because it's so interesting and it's so diverse and it's growing so fast. You'll never run out of something interesting to think about.
And that's what it's all about, right? Loving what you do and keep loving it.
I feel lucky to have been in such an interesting career.
Hi there, Sarah Fahara here, owner of Nourished Brain Solutions. It's my goal with this podcast to explore strategies for empowered and well-informed food and eating decisions. If this information has been supportive to you, please share with your friends and leave me a review up on iTunes. To learn more about how food is impacting the way you feel on a day-to-day basis, head over to my website at www.nourishedbrainsolutions.com for a free copy of my food mood journal. We'll see you soon.